This slide, I could put 50,000 different bullet points on this slide if I wanted to. The bottom line is every single analyst, every single commentator in the industry is saying that the cloud is going to grow and grow and grow and faster than they thought. So I don't care what these bullet points are. I don't care what slides you could find. This isn't a passing fad. This is a fundamental shift. And the reason it's a fundamental shift is not because of the technology. This is what's actually been very challenging for our business, the IT industry. We have not been leading it. We've been in a nice position for years as an industry. We've led IT change. New copy of SQL comes out, Microsoft tell us about it, we go and do some work on it, and then we go and tell our customers. And if you're a customer, you maybe go and do an R&D piece of exercise internally, and out of that R&D exercise, you decide as a technology team how you're going to use it. The social shift is that people have stopped wanting to own the asset. They don't want to own the asset, they want the value of the asset, they want the use of the asset, but they don't necessarily want ownership of the asset. And actually that's not necessarily that wild, because how many people here own the building that your office is in? You rent it. If you added all the rental costs over 10 or 15 years, you could probably build or certainly owned the office, but you don't because of cost of capital. How many of you own your own fleet of trucks to ship goods around Australia? Nobody. We outsource it. And yet IT has managed to convince the industry over years that the thing you do is build it yourself. We've been kind of called out on that. You as the customers in the room have called us out and said, no, we want a service. And the reason I use the Fedex example is probably the most complicated thing that FedEx do is keep an aeroplane in the sky. When they send a parcel from Perth all the way over to New York, they've got to do some pretty amazing things. But they don't tell you about that. Their advertising doesn't talk about how amazing their pilots are, the regime they have for maintaining the aeroplane, the software they have that does lowest cost routing to get your package there. All they tell you is turn up at a local and convenient location, we'll give you a fixed cost, and it will get there to New York tomorrow, the day after. And if it doesn't, you get your money back. That's what we care about. That's why when FedEx got into lots of trouble a few years ago, they came up with this tagline, which was, when it absolutely, positively has to be there tomorrow, it's FedEx. They didn't turn around and say, let me tell you about how many Cisco certified engineers we've got. Let me tell you about how amazing we are about buying the aeroplanes from Boeing and how we negotiate. Let me tell you about how many hours we maintain this aeroplane. Let me tell you about, oh, by the way, on time and on cost? Not sure about that. But that's what we've done as an industry. So there's a fundamental social shift which is driving this notion of the cloud, and the cloud doesn't have to be the sort of out there in the cloud, but it does have to be something that customers can consume without worrying about how it works. And that's based on trust. Trust becomes the single biggest thing that a supplier and a buyer have to have in this new world. You as buyers of services need to be able to trust that Zeta are offering a service that matches the promise. And if you are an intermediary who's offering services to customers, you have to know that you can add value to that and not be driven by the technology. So it's a really important and fundamental shift. People now care about the outcomes, not about the bits and bytes along the way. So, great. The cloud. Yay, fantastic. Hopefully you're all revved up and you're going to go and buy some stuff. But there are some challenges. Change is difficult. I don't care how much you're excited about the possibility. I don't care if you've got a hole burning in your pocket with money that you want to spend on a solution. It still doesn't make it easy to do. You've got existing investments. You've got people who have skills that may actually have to be reskilled. Some people may have to be made redundant because they can't make that transition. Change is complicated. I'm guessing some of you in the room have got children maybe in their teens. Anybody children in their teens? Any blokes who've got a daughter around about the age of 16? Yeah? Nice one, mate. I'd come off the stage and shake your hand. It's interesting, isn't it? Doesn't get easier, it just gets different. And you're part of that species. So, I'm not happy. Strange, weird. One minute she's happy, the next minute she's bizarre. But the bottom line is, if I said to her, Kodak, who? Company that owned 90-odd% of the market for film. And people go, oh, Kodak didn't really get it. Oh no, they went bankrupt and they sold all the patents for digital imaging, which they'd created, to the companies who just put them out of business. They knew exactly what was happening, but change was so difficult for them that they couldn't make the transition. And I used to just have the Kodak one. In fact, I used to have the Kodak and then a picture of a dodo. Same thing. But bottom line, Pan Am, they were the envy of the airline industry. At their peak, everybody wanted to be Pan Am. And they're gone. Blockbuster, almost gone. In the States, they've gone bankrupt. They knew what was happening. It wasn't a surprise that the internet was going to drive video on demand, but they just didn't know how to change. So whilst change is difficult, and while some of you, whether you are suppliers or buyers of technology, may go, this is difficult, doing nothing can, and often is, significantly worse. So I'm not suggesting anybody throws everything away and starts from scratch, but you need to have a plan and you need to work through stuff. And disaster recovery and a few other things are, and I'll come to that, really, really obvious and easy ways to get into this space because they're non-disruptive to your current operations. So, next concerns, and probably two of them, which are the sort of where is my data and security, come up every single time. Thing is, they come up every single time any new thing in IT comes along. When we went from mainframes to Unix boxes, people were going, yeah, but where's my data? Used to be in one nice big room. Now we've got lots of Unix boxes. PCs, oh, yeah, but where's my data? And what about security? So these are absolutely good and valid questions. I'm not dismissing the question at all, but we always ask it. And the reality is, you've only got to read the press. I mean, every government around the world is doing deals with the US about what data can be accessed. If you think your data is genuinely, completely safe anywhere, and I don't even mean in the cloud, I mean anywhere, then you've misunderstood the security question. Any data you hold has always been at risk. You just have to measure the risks. And what the cloud has helped us to do is review those risks and look at the risk rewards. Anybody who had been, for example, a hi-fi salesperson 20-odd years ago would have said that the MP3 player was absolutely doomed to failure because by any single measure of risk-reward, the MP3 player was pointless. Tiny speakers with an amplifier this big that fitted in your pocket and cost $100. Why on earth would you buy an MP3 player when you want to have perfect high fidelity? Why on earth would you do any of that? Well, because there was a reward that they hadn't measured. The reward was you could take your whole music collection with you, and people were prepared to make a compromise for that. And what we're seeing in the industry is while security is absolutely important, people are starting to make compromises for what they used to hold absolutely sacrosanct because the business benefits have become so huge to do something different. The fact that every single person in their organisation can say be enabled to have email anywhere in the world immediately without a big infrastructure investment means that they're going to go down the cloud route. And actually, for a number of them, the cloud is significantly more secure. There was a survey that was done in Singapore recently, asked a whole bunch of small businesses, is security a reason to not go to the cloud or to go to the cloud? And it was roughly 50-50 response. Half of them said they reckoned the cloud was more secure. How on earth could that be? How many of you have a couple of servers sort of in the middle of your office somewhere? Yeah. Not everybody has a nice server room. And we worry about security. Well, who comes into your office after hours? The cleaner. We're worried about security in the cloud. There's a cleaner who can walk into your office with a key to get to every single room and, if necessary, walk away if they want to with your server. And you're worried about the cloud? Now, some of you have probably been really clever, and you've actually gone and built a little mini data center with a rack in your building. Only problem is that used to be the cleaner's cupboard for their brooms and their mops, and it still is. So now you've got this really, really nice shiny rack with sort of hot swap drives, which is sitting in a room which has got the mop and the bucket, which the cleaner can get into, and now she doesn't have to walk away, or he doesn't have to walk away with a whole great big server. It's just the hot swap drives. So these are real concerns. Real concerns. Do not dismiss them, but do look at what you have today before you say, I'm concerned about the cloud. You should be concerned about what you have today and then measure that against whether the cloud improves things. The key out of all of this slide, and I won't go through every one because there's not enough time, but the key out of this slide is you need to be working with a trusted partner. Now, if you're a small business specialist or a systems integrator, then that specialist who you want to be dealing with is someone like Zeta. If you're an end customer, then you need to be working with somebody who you trust, not somebody who's going to go, cloud, security. Okay, help me understand why cloud security is an issue. You need to trust them to give you a response that actually matches your business. Clearly, if you are working with the Ministry of Defence, then yes, there are a completely different set of security considerations than if you are working in a school. Both really serious security considerations, but completely different areas of conversation. So you need to work with a provider who definitely gets this. So if there are some opportunities and there are some challenges and the challenges are real, what do you do next? How do you actually move forward? Well, I do consulting, so I have to have some sort of 4-box matrix. It's mandatory. And if I had enough time, I'd have a triangle that was upside down, because that's mandatory as well. But in this case, if you think about the things you want to do in terms of investing in your business, and obviously in this case in terms of the cloud, maybe you think about it this way. There are some things that you already do today, but the cloud gives you the ability to turn that into more of a commoditized solution, and it's a cost-down option. It means you can do more. You might not spend less. Let's be clear about this. The unit price might go down, but you could end up spending the same amount of money, because what you'll do is you'll now enable more of your people to have that service. Email is a good example. You suddenly turn around and say, we've got 20% of our workforce who work in the warehouse and we don't give them an email. Well, if it became easy to give everybody email and lowest cost, I'll spend the same amount of money, but I'll make sure everybody in my business is enabled. So some of what you do may be this. Some of it may be, we've always known we wanted to do it, but the risk-reward equation never quite matched. And DR is a great example of this one. Most of us know that there are issues around our backup and business continuity strategy. We know we're taking risks. We know that there are things that we're doing that if it all went pear-shaped, we'd be in trouble. But when we looked at the cost of solving the problem, a full duplicate of every single server we have in another data center somewhere, we just said, as much as I know what the risks are, I can't justify the costs to reduce the risk. The cloud allows you to revisit that risk-reward equation in these sort of areas. To go and actually re-look at what you're doing and say, has the cloud fundamentally changed that risk-reward equation and changed the cost that it's going to take me to mitigate the risk? And if it does, should I be considering it? I'm guessing that's why a lot of you are in the room today. The final one is things that I didn't even think were possible now become possible. The notion of being able to turn around and say, you know what? I've got this really great idea and it's going to take 1,000 servers and I'll need them for about half a day. You would have just said, don't even begin to go down that path. This is not a credible waste. It's just a complete waste of my time to have that thought process, never mind to see if it's possible. And yet now there are pharmaceutical organizations who are literally doing that with the large global guys, taking thousands and thousands of servers for days and weeks, but doing work that they never contemplated doing before because the infrastructure costs were so huge it couldn't be justified. You need to think about whether there are things in there for you. Somewhere out of all of that, if you're an end customer, you will have your sweet spot. And if you are a supplier to the end customer, the systems integrator, the small business specialist, you need to understand where that is. And this is a business-driven sweet spot, not a technology one. You need to understand where your customers have their sweet spot. So, all that's great. Where do you start? Well, there are 4 areas at the moment that are hot in the industry, these 4. That's good, because if you're a customer, that means there's probably quite a lot of competition to supply you, and a growing number of people doing credible services. Obviously, it does mean there's more competition in the market if you're a supplier, but that's good as well, because it keeps us on our toes. Now, you know Zeta, they clearly have been in this space, the infrastructure as a service. Awesome. Some of the things which we can't talk about, which they're looking at over the next 6-12 months, are just going to make it even more awesome. Keep talking to them about that. But the one that we're here today about is this disaster recovery. The reason it's, again, important when we talk about it is because it has this equation of the cost of delivering a good service with a good RPO, recovery point objective. In other words, how quickly you can get your data back, an RTO, the recovery time objective. It's brilliant. I can get my data back in 30 seconds. The problem is, it was last backed up 2 years ago. Awesome. or I can get my data back sometime next week, but it will be accurate to the point that we took it. So there's a whole load of stuff that's happening in this business continuity space. I'm not going to steal the thunder of Luke, because he's going to talk about how it works. But the point is, this is a classic area where we have all had the risk, but we've never been able to justify the risk-reward. Zeta have come up with a service that will help you review that back into that number 2 bucket. And so if I kind of build this out and say, most people have some sort of backup strategy. Anybody who, I mean, you've all got a backup strategy, yeah? Everybody's got a backup plan, surely. Come on, help me with a hand at least. You've got a backup plan, yeah? How many of you actually then go and do a rehearsal of that backup? Yeah, maybe, not so much, possibly. I work for Exxon. Yeah, we used to do rehearsals, and I don't think in the 5 years I worked for Exxon we had a single rehearsal that actually worked properly from beginning to end. Didn't happen. But we have recovery. Actually, what businesses need to have is a business continuity plan. Because business continuity is not just about the backup. It's what do you do with the backup? How do you get it? Where do you go and sit? How many of you would describe yourself as small to medium-sized businesses? Do you know where the nearest McDonald's is to your office? Yeah. Why would that be relevant to a business continuity conversation?
Because there's internet.
Because there's free internet. And so if you had a business continuity plan, if you are an end customer, you need to know where those are. And if you're adding a value-added service as a supplier, I would suggest to you, you need to, in terms of your business continuity document, have a paragraph with a map that shows where the nearest hotspots are to the company you're providing the service to. Because that way, they've already had a conversation with Joe, the owner of the local burger bar, and says, in the event of a disaster, how many burgers an hour do I have to buy to have those 4 tables at the back? It is by far and away the cheapest way of having second sight for people sitting as opposed to the technology. But what does this do? I put a box up here. There are lots of conversations, and if you're a service provider, we can have a chat about those afterwards in the next session, about adding value on top of this, things that you might not have thought of them. Anybody got Windows Server 2003 in their estate? A few of you. You know that it's expiring like XP has just now. You know it's expiring in a year's time. Hey, XP, that should have been relatively easy. Buy a new box. Worst case scenario, go and buy a new laptop. Server's a bit more tricky. So how the hell do you migrate a server? Well, let's say you've got an image because you've done this, and somewhere in a third-party location there's an image of your server. You might be able to work with a service provider who says, what we'll do is we'll take a copy of that image and we'll do a whole load of migration as a service work for you over the next 12 months to see what the issues would be if you ever migrated that server. So I don't know if anybody's going to do that for you. I don't know if you want to do it. I know that this time next year Microsoft will stop supporting 2003. By going down a path like this, do you enable yourself to have things that you haven't thought about doing before? That's where real value comes out of this, and it's not just a cost down. This should never just be a cost down. It should be about increasing the business value and doing things that maybe you've always wanted to do but couldn't afford, or things that you just really, really hadn't thought about doing before. So I know I'm going to get the in a moment. So I put this slide up, strange colours. We actually live in a hybrid world. Salesforce turn around and go, forget software, it's gone. Reality is, it's rubbish. Yeah, we still have mainframes doing most of the transactions in the world. We still have AS400s with dust on top of them this thick, because you know it's working, because nobody's touched it. Got Unix boxes, got PCs, and the cloud will add to this. It is going to be a hybrid world. And in fact, some of this is going to get even more complicated. Because we're not just in an office with desktop PCs. People are working anywhere. You know, use any device anywhere. If you are a customer, how many of your people work from home? Quite a few, probably. And how do they access your network, which you've probably spent a reasonable amount of time and effort locking down? Probably through a $50, $100 Belkin router with security not turned on. You spent a lot of time and effort fixing your office, but you know nothing about securing the locations of your staff. You need to think about that if you're an end customer, and if you're a supplier, you need to be thinking about how you have a services opportunity in this space. Because the reality is, this is a world of complexity, and working with people who understand that and can help you solve that problem is going to be really, really important. The trusted advisor is still the trusted advisor. We're just And we're still advising on business things. We just have different sets of tools in our bag. So my last but one slide. I really don't care, in all honesty, what you do out of this. I really don't. But I do hope you have a plan to do something. Now, there are all sorts of ways of having plans, and some people don't know where to start. These are some of my favourites. Oh, I've just done that one. There we go. These are some of my favourites. There is a guy called Simon Sinek. If you've never seen his video, go and watch his videos on YouTube. There's a guy called Dan Pink. Go and have a look at his video. Really, really good. I think they're going to get the slides if they turn up, yeah? If you haven't read The Purple Cow, awesome. It's a great book. Really help you about change. Blue Ocean Strategy, mentioned it already. And then there's a thing called the Business Model Canvas. These are really, really nice ways for you just to get started about how you would do some change and how you might remodel your business. Anybody heard of a guy called Wayne Gretzky? Yeah? Arguably one of the best ice hockey players in the world. And a journalist came up to me and said, Wayne, you know, what makes you so great? And he said, well, look, good players play where the hockey puck is. Great players skate to where it's going to be. I would suggest that you as an organisation, you've taken the time out today because you're predisposed to be in that latter camp. You are thinking about where the puck's going to be. Please, 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 with that plan, think about how you're going to get there. Don't just stay where you are, because if you've ever watched ice hockey, you know what happens if you stand still next to the puck. Some large bloke like me, with padding that makes me 3 times the size, is going to smack the hell out of you against the perspex. So please, don't stay still. It's going to hurt. Have a plan and skate to where the puck's going to be. Now, at this point, normally somebody like me does here are the 5 things I want you to remember. I'm going to tell you what you should remember. Well, I'm going to suggest actually you should do it yourself. There'll be some things that you've heard from me, and there'll be some things you hear from Luke, which will simply reinforce what you know already. And that's great. Please take those on board, because they mean that you give you the confidence to keep doing what you're doing already. That's awesome. Some things you'll hear will remind you of things that you kind of knew but have forgot. It's a bit like the pilot with his checklist before he takes off. He knows what he's doing, it's just it's complicated. So he has to have a checklist to make sure he doesn't forget to do anything, because that would be bad. But hopefully there'll also be some nugget, maybe just 1 or 2 little comments that have revealed something to you, made you go, aha, I need to do something about that. Something that basically drives you to action, rather than simply go, that was interesting. That was really interesting. I'm hoping that you hear something today that will say, this isn't just interesting, this is essential. I need to go and do something now about this, because this is not something I can ignore for any longer.